Well, that's back to that helpless situation, right? If you don't have anything else, like, but you still have God, then you have everything you need.
Yeah. People who have Jesus Christ as their God have unlimited resources. And that doesn't mean that you have a big giant pile of money. It means you have unlimited resources. Because he, as we've talked about through our whole series, has created everything, including you. But wealth, you cannot place your trust in wealth. And that's what I think the problem is with wearing yourself out to get more of it. Welcome to Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. I'm Timothy.
And I'm Caleb.
And you're listening to Bible Discussions, the forum where we explore biblical topics that are relevant to your life. Today, we're continuing our series on the 30 sayings of the wise from the book of Proverbs. And this episode, we're going to discuss saying number 7, which talks about not wearing yourself out to get rich. So let's go ahead and read that in Proverbs 23, verses 4 and 5.
Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust to your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. I hate when that happens.
That happens to me all the time. Okay, so I haven't said this in the last 2 episodes, Caleb, because I don't know why. For some reason I forgot to. But Caleb, you're the historian.
Yeah, I'm not going to get paid as much for those episodes.
So is this like a hypothetical here, or have people in history actually worn themselves out in the pursuit of riches?
Well, no, it's definitely historical. I mean, it's hard to think of like famous individuals because most of them, if they ruined themselves, probably nobody remembers them.
Yes.
We remember all the like rich, powerful people. But I mean, just think about like a gold rush, 1849 gold rush, South African or Brazilian gold rush. Like there's people hear a hint of riches and they all flock there.
They'd
And
even go to Alaska for one in the Yukon.
It's a little bit too cold, maybe.
That's where there was a big one there.
Yeah. But the people who made most of the money were like the people who thought, let me go there and open up a shop because all those people are going to realize they still need food and clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, we see this in like certain movies too. Like I'm thinking of The Man from Snowy River, right?
Yeah.
You got like the old uncle who's like digging away in that mine for his whole life, finding nothing.
Spur.
Yeah.
Old Spur.
There's Australian gold rush too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, somebody like that could spend years digging, thinking, I'm going to get rich tomorrow. And this is the day I'm going to hit the vein of gold, right? And then, like, they wake up 10 years, 15, 20 years later, and they have no family. Everybody's, like, left them out to their reclusive life in their gold mine.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can ruin your life in pursuit of riches, right?
Yeah, or anything else too. I mean, now you have people that just sit at a computer and play the stock market all day, and it could all be wiped out tomorrow. I know a guy who I'll keep him totally anonymous, but yeah, he had some money and he got really into the investing. He was like doing all this research and found people that he trusted and was listening to, and thought that he had some good leads, and then he lost most of the money. So, and he was like, "Man, if I would have just bought a house with it instead."
Yeah. Well, I know I had just to tell a story on myself. I had like $10,000 when I graduated high school, and I was like back in the mid '80s, and from all the jobs I'd had and stuff, and I guess when I was in college, it was 1989, I think, and my dad was like, I don't remember what year Microsoft went public, but he was like, yeah, that you should put that into that Microsoft company, and we've been using their computers and stuff. And so I didn't do it, but
Great.
I think I bought a car with it instead.
There goes my inheritance.
Yeah, so what you do with money, it could turn out to be very lucrative, or it could turn out to be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all know somebody who tried to start a small business or some other kind of endeavor like that and lost everything. And like you said, Caleb, those people go into obscurity, not into history.
Yeah.
They should write obscurity books instead of history books. There'd probably be a market for that.
John the plumber and Sue the teller.
All right. So, another good example is like professional boxers.
Yeah. Well, any athletes. Yeah.
Yeah. But boxers
who,
seem to be particularly good at flaming out after they win the big, heavyweight champion of the world or whatever.
Yeah.
There's been like Mike Tyson is one who like lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Evander Holyfield. And also here in a Knoxville original, Big John Tate. Big John Tate was the heavyweight champ of the world, and I ended up feeding him sloppy joes at a homeless shelter down when I was in college, and then unfortunately he died in a car accident. So
that's crazy.
Destitute, but yeah. So that's. I
guess you don't get a contract as easily if you're the heavyweight champion versus like a team sport. You get contracts and stuff.
Oh, well, you do sign contracts to fight in a fight. Win or lose, you're still going to get paid.
But for years and years of sustained activity.
But much like the baseball players, so they have these agents. The baseball players have agents, but in the case like these famous boxers, I won't name any names, but they have like not very reputable guys that represent them and get them their
who wants
fights.
to invest in a guy who's going to get the tar beat out of him night after night?
Well, I mean, with the pay-per-view money and all that stuff and the Las Vegas money. There's a lot of money.
Yeah, but you get worn out, and then then they lose interest.
But again, worn out. Okay, that's what this whole thing says. You're going to wear yourself out to get rich, right? So you're going to get your head beat in to get rich in the case of a boxer. But actually, though, in my mind, when I hear this proverb saying that don't wear yourself out to get rich, it makes me think of Psalm 127. And I only put. Well, I'll read. Let's read the whole thing. Psalm 127, verses 1 through 5. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. This passage, this psalm's always meant a lot to me because I have 3 sons, and the older versions say sons. Who blessed is the man who has sons. But so that's always drawn me to it. And then it has this section in there that I find fascinating that talks about how you shouldn't get up early and stay up late chasing after wealth, So the whole thing kind of talks about how if God isn't in something, there's no point in doing it. And if you're just chasing wealth for the sake of wealth, then that's foolish if there's no God in it.
Yeah, it's really interesting too how the psalm juxtaposes children with wealth. Right? Almost as if it's one or the other, which isn't necessarily true. But a lot of people act like that, like it's one or the other. I can't afford to have kids. I got to focus on my career first. I mean, we live in the wealthiest society of all time. We have the lowest fertility rates of all time. Like nobody dies in childbirth, either mother or child anymore, except in extremely rare circumstances. And we're not even at a replacement level birth rate. Like I looked up some statistics. According to the CIA, just the U.S. fertility rate, the average woman in this country has 1.84 children over the course of her life. So that's mother and father. That's 2 people only having 1.8 children.
Yeah.
So that's not going to replace 2 people. And that's actually better than a lot of the other like Western countries in the world. A lot of them are much lower. Some are actually the lowest. Everything I was looking at, the lowest are places like Tahiti or like St. Kitts, like tourist, islands.
Yeah,
because like the people who live there are just like largely just serving at these like resorts or whatever, and it's not like where you go to raise a family. You go there to cheat on your family or something. It's just and so in all the like the wealthy countries, it's just I looked up on the World Bank the average global fertility rate is 2.2, and replacement is 2.1, because you're always gonna have some people that don't have kids or die young or something. So we need 2.1 with the level of healthcare we have today, and we're about to drop below that.
Hmm.
Basically, every top country on the list is in Africa, so the future is African.
Wow. Well, one of the things that I like about this passage too is that it's like you said, it's pro-natalist. It's
Mhm.
like have more kids. And there's an idiom in here that's kind of interesting at the end of verse 2, where it says, where when we read it, it says he grants sleep to those he loves. Like,
Mhm.
you can rest and don't have to stay up late, get up early, all that.
Yeah.
But the actual Hebrew says, for while they sleep, he provides for those he loves.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of a cool way to think of it, is that God's always providing for us, whether we're awake or asleep. Um, we need to trust God for everything that we need. And that's kind of a cool way to think about, having kids too, because I know, at least in my own life, the times that I've been most prayerful has been when my wife was pregnant, because there's like nothing you can do
Mhm.
to help her other than just make sure she gets, good meals and plenty of rest, and you help her with stuff. But I mean, you can't do anything with the baby. It's inside her.
Mhm.
How do you help the baby directly? It's not possible. And so you have to trust God for that. And I think, well, a more agrarian societies probably understood that better, because they're waiting for the crops to grow. They're planting seeds in the
Mhm.
ground, expecting them to grow. We go out and it's a little bit more abstract. It's like I'm putting in a hard day's work, and that's gonna, turn into money somehow.
Yeah, I don't get my
It's
food from the farm, or I don't get it from the land or from a
yeah.
cow.
Hmm.
I go and buy, like, bread and a steak. It's,
Yeah.
like,
But you gotta get
separated from the where it's
yeah.
produced. It's
So
this
you
completed product.
yeah, it's not a barter type thing, or it's not a
Yeah.
subsistence type thing. So it's like you work, you get the money, you take the money, you buy the stuff, and
Mhm.
somebody else is working to make the stuff, and that's how they get their money to get other stuff. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's
there are times where you feel completely helpless. That might be why we're so afraid to have kids these days, because we have an independence complex in this country. Like, you have to do every single little thing yourself. And that's one thing we've talked about, like when we did the 10 commandments. I really wanted to emphasize how, like, even if you want to be, you're not fully independent. Like,
mhm,
when God leaves the first table of the law, which
yeah.
are like the things about God, and goes to the things about society, like, don't murder and everything. I was pointing out, we would always put don't murder first, but he puts honor your mother and father first, emphasizing you came from these people.
Mhm.
It doesn't just start with you. You weren't just dropped in here on a pin. And I think we're afraid of feeling helpless. I know, like, what you meant about watching your wife be pregnant and give birth. When we were in the hospital, they decided she was going to have to go. She tried to have a natural birth, and they decided she needed to go have a C-section. So they told me, "We'll come get you." I don't remember, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then they just took her out of the room, and I'm sitting in there by myself in a hospital room for, I'm pretty sure it was 47 years. Like, I was just, like, completely helpless, just staring out the window, like, I wonder if I'll ever see them again. And at that, like, in those times, you have to. I don't know what you do except pray. Like,
Mhm.
if you don't have that, then you really have nothing. So that's probably what people are so afraid of. That if they give
Yeah.
up their career, they give up control over things, this false sense of control. I think that's what we're afraid of. And that's probably what this is getting at. Like, why are you staying up late and getting up early? Right? Because you're
Right.
trying to do more and more because you need to
Well,
control everything.
and we know from our Jeremiah episode that again and again, like that
Mm,
God rises up
yeah.
early, as it says in the Hebrew idiom there. He rises up early to take care of the things that we need. He's been rising up early to warn us and teach us, you know, everything we need to know, and we
Hmm.
still don't listen to him. So,
Yeah. What did that say? Children are heritage from the Lord, right?
mhm.
It's sometimes rendered blessing, but, like, heritage, like, it's an inheritance, right? It's comparing it with wealth. Like, that is the wealth that God has to give you, more than material wealth.
Yeah,
It's not, you can't compare it.
yeah. So our proverb that we were studying, is saying, "Don't wear yourself out. Don't try to do it all yourself," like
Hmm.
you were saying. And because even if you do make more money, right, it's prone to just vaporize and fly away.
Mhm.
So, like, why did you spend all that time for something that was so transient and gone? And then this psalm adds, will make family your focus instead, I think. And that way you'll never be put to shame, it says.
Mhm.
And it says that you'll never be put to shame if you put your faith and your investment in your family.
Yeah.
So get your priorities right is basically what it's saying, right?
Right.
So there's the other old saying that this reminds me of that we say today is no one ever said on their deathbed, "Oh, I wish I had spent more time at work." You know,
Yeah.
you gather their family around them and they want to spend time with their family.
I think I've shared it on here a couple times now, but that Peter Kraft, author and professor of philosophy, always said he's written over 100 books, and he always said it would be better if he had written 0 books and had an extra kid. He would have done more for the world.
So this is something that's kind of foundational in Greek philosophy, dating back to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. A lot of people credit Socrates with saying in everything moderation, but he didn't actually say that apparently. It's just
Well,
credited
who
to him
knows?
based on the concepts of
We
that
don't
he
know
taught.
anything he really said or
That's
wrote
true.
or thought because he didn't write it down.
But Aristotle, though, he was credited with the idea of the golden mean, and that was where you try to find a middle ground between two extremes, and that's where you find virtue.
Hmm.
And so, in the Nicomachean Ethics, Book 2, Aristotle said that moral virtue is a mean, then, and in what sense it is so, and that it is a mean between two vices, the one involving excess, the other deficiency, and that it is such because its character is to aim at what is intermediate in passions and in actions. So, kind of the idea that you want to be right in the middle. You don't want to be on either of the extremes.
Mm.
And that I think this,
Yeah, between excess and deficiency is the part to focus on there, I think.
yeah, correct. And that's I think ties in well with this proverb in our current discussion, right? Because it's good to be productive and to take care of your family, like we were just saying.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also wrong to spend all your time pursuing money. So
Yeah.
So somehow you have to find the middle ground.
It would be bad to be negligent of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like that, that scene. It's a choice you have to make. So it's like that scene in Indiana Jones and the Final Crusade where he's like reaching out. He's hanging on with one hand. He's reaching out with his other hand for the Grail, and his dad's like, "Hey, let it go."
Yeah.
And he's like, I can almost reach it. And he's like, "No, it's impossible. You can't save yourself and the Grail. You're going to lose one or the other." So
whoever loses his life will save it.
Yeah.
He's reaching for eternal life. Yeah.
But anyways, he has to let go of it to be rescued. Well, you can't have it all. Like, it's some things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole thing of the gold mean the extremes is talking
Indiana
about.
Jones obviously watched Biblocus because the only good Indiana Jones movies are the Christian ones.
Yeah. One where he gets smacked in the face for blasphemy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Greeks had this concept of the golden mean and finding that middle ground, and that I think that same idea is here in this psalm. But another thing that it talks about is that there's things that wear a man out, and one of those things the proverb says is surely work. Right, work can wear you out. It says if you're getting up earlier and staying up later to try to get more stuff, that is going to wear you out. But another thing that also wears you out can be poverty, because it's no fun to be impoverished. It's no fun to, not have enough and be lacking all the time, and that will wear you out as well.
Yeah, you could be forced into subservience, being made to work as like a slave or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why God has to put in the Sabbath command, don't even try to make your servants or animals work on the Sabbath.
That's true.
I know what you're going to do.
Yeah,
you have to give all people rest.
Yeah, we talked about that. And so both of those things are wearisome to us to even contemplate. So those are kind of like two extremes, like wearing yourself out to get more than you need, wearing yourself out because you don't have enough, and you're worried all the time about it. And I think that the virtue is found in the moderation of those two things, because some amount of work is going to relieve all of your poverty. If you work to relieve your poverty, then that's a good purpose for work. That's why God gave us work, so that we could like earn things or grow things or collect things that we need, to remove our poverty so that we can have a full life, right? But how much work becomes too much, right? If you're trying to find this golden mean. And I think what Psalm 127 is saying is that God will provide for us, right, to relieve both problems. The problem of the poverty, where I don't have enough to live, and the problem of working too much and wearing yourself out. He's saying that I've already solved this problem. I want you to live in the middle, in the moderation between the two, just like the Greek philosophy would teach, right? But when you're trying to decide how much is enough, right? I think the answer is enough is enough. That's what God's talking about. He's saying, I will provide for you enough. And when you have enough, that means God's removed the burden of poverty from your life. But when we then work too hard to try to make ourselves wealthy, to make ourselves rich and go beyond enough, now God's saying, you're wearing yourself out in a new way. You're adding new stress to your life of chasing after this impossible wealth, because you will never have as much as your eyes want. And so, like, find the middle ground where you have the blessing of not having to struggle in poverty, but not have to struggle to get more than you need. And I think that's the middle ground that this proverb was trying to find.
Yeah, and we have to remember God doesn't work or evaluate things the same way that a human does, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my mind goes to what he tells Abraham. He's like, know that your descendants are going to be enslaved for 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he leaves them in slavery for 400 years, for generations in Egypt. And, in our worldly judgment of that situation, that's not enough, right? But remember what the Israelites do as soon as they get out in the desert. We need to go back. At least we had, as Andrew Clavin put it the other day, 3 hots and a cot. We had, we had three square meals a day and a roof over our heads. It's like suddenly that seemed better than being out here in the, depending on Pharaoh to put, slop in your bowl.
Well, the other
depending
passage,
on God out here in the desert is worse.
The other passage that you've brought up a couple of times in our series, or since the beginning of our podcast, is the Jeremiah passage where he says, the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, right? But the rest of the plan was, well, after you go into captivity.
Yeah, if you read it in context, part of that plan is allowing a foreign army to come in, burn everything down, kill a bunch of you, take the rest of you into slavery.
Yeah.
And that's going to be good and prosper you.
Yeah. But Jeremiah does get let loose out of the line.
Yeah.
When they're taking
Everybody
him into
hates
captivity.
Jeremiah for that prophecy. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just can't, like, God taking care of you is more than just physical blessings.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be communion with him.
Well, and isn't that what this that the proverb is saying, that don't out clever yourself. Like, God already has the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Go with his plan, the plan he has to prosper you. Well, that's his plan. Don't come up with your own separate plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's not as clever as God's, I promise. Okay. You think, oh, I got a better idea than what God was suggesting. It's like, I don't think so. So, another place I think in Scripture where somebody tries to do too much and wears himself out, right, is in Moses in Exodus, when Jethro comes to visit him, and
he definitely, he definitely wears himself out.
Yeah, Moses is making all the decisions for everybody, and he's like a micromanager. And so in Exodus 18, 13 through 23, it says,
The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied."
So here's Moses. He wanted to do everything himself, like just like
That's like we were talking about, this control complex,
Mhm.
this independence complex that we have.
Yeah, and he wanted to trust his own cleverness, like oh, I know the law better than everybody else, and so I'll be the one to make all the decisions.
Mhm.
But he was wearing everybody out, not just himself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, everybody else was standing around all day waiting.
yeah, that's always fun.
I love waiting in lines.
I like to stand in the heat in the middle of Palestine. But anyway,
Yeah. It would be Sinai, right?
well, yeah, Sinai in their case.
Even worse.
Yeah, that's probably worse. Arabian desert or whatever. All right, so here's a couple other passages that are of interest in the Old Testament. Proverbs 25:16 says, "If you find honey, eat just enough. Too much of it, and you will vomit."
Yeah.
That makes me think of the golden mean. There's like, oh well, I got honey. I like it. I like it when I taste it. I'm just gonna eat a whole bunch of it.
Yeah. Possibly my favorite proverb is 26:15. "A sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it back to his mouth." It's like,
Yeah, that's an
yeah.
extreme.
You get more than you can actually handle. You don't get any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are ones that talk about extremes of behavior or foolishness. And so another one is Ecclesiastes 5:10, which says, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless."
Yeah, he goes on and says in verses 11 and 12, "As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owners except to feast their eyes on them? The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep." It's like, when you're working your butt off, even if you
hmm
don't get enough to eat, you just pass out at the end of the day, and you at least get some good rest. But the wealthy guy is so concerned about his schemes and about losing his wealth,
hmm
that he's worried about it. He can't sleep.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what we were talking about earlier. That God
yeah.
provides for us while we sleep.
Yes. So, both or all of these scripture passages we've looked at, they speak to this idea of the golden mean. Don't overdo things, seek moderation. But the interesting thing about it is that these were all recorded like 600 years or 600 plus years before Aristotle was
Hmm.
writing. So, 500 years, say, before Socrates was around. So, like these ideas were around for hundreds of years in the biblical text before the Greeks started to work up their philosophies, and so it makes you wonder: did they have access to the Old Testament texts and whatnot? So we talked about a lot of stuff. We haven't yet talked about riches sprouting wings and flying away. So
Yeah.
was when it comes to money, I think we all know how you can look one minute and you have a whole bunch of it, and you look the next and hey, where did it all go?
I was trying to think of like a good visual for that, like from a movie or something. I'm sure there is one, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. I can think of like the opposite. Like the great Western symbol of greed is what? The dragon, right?
Yeah.
The dragon's hoard. And I think about like in like The Hobbit, for example, like the dwarves had that massive wealth under the mountain, and the dragon flies in and just kicks them all out. They can't beat him, so they'll have to leave. Rather than it didn't fly away in that example. But I was
Yeah, yeah.
thinking, why did they put wings on a dragon if he's the symbol of greed?
Mhm.
Maybe that's tied to that.
Hmm.
'Cause there's got to be a good visual from a movie somewhere where a bird just takes something and flies away.
I don't know. I have to think about it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know there's multiple ways to think about how your wealth could be stolen. In case Caleb mentioned a dragon. Okay. That hasn't happened to me yet, but someone could come and steal your wealth, right? Because we were just talking about lusting over things. And if
Mhm.
you have the capacity to lust over wealth, then everyone else that you know has the capacity to lust after your wealth. And if you have a bunch of it, take it away from you.
Mhm.
It's like I know a lot of these people that do survivalist, planning, waiting for the next World War III or whatever, and they have bomb shelters and hoard up a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, amongst your supplies, make sure you have the biggest gun,
Yeah.
available, because if anybody comes with one bigger than yours, you're not going to have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, people will come and steal your stuff. Another way that you could lose your wealth, right, is wasting it in profligate spending, like we talked about with the boxers and
Mhm.
and pro athletes who have lost everything.
Or the prodigal son.
Yeah, the story of the prodigal son, sure. And then the third way that we haven't talked about yet is economic collapse, and I think that's on everybody's minds all the time nowadays.
Yeah.
We've had things
Well,
happen.
because we've been borrowing money
Yeah,
like
like.
crazy for
Hmm.
a lifetime.
Hey, we should do a session, an episode on not going into debt.
Yeah, that
Oh,
would be
wait a
great.
second. Wait a second. We just did. All
Yeah,
right.
that we should have brought that up when we were talking about all those world statistics. The world's got a ton of debt and
Yeah.
then
Hmm.
no children. It's like we don't have either one.
Well, then we shouldn't feel bad kicking the debt down to our kids. We don't have any.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, but economic collapse can happen unexpectedly at any time. Like this happened in 2008 when we had the big housing crisis, the housing bubble and burst,
Mhm.
in the housing market. And I know there were developments that sat around our town that just never got built. They had like an entrance and the start of a road, and it just
Mhm.
sat there for a decade.
We had one behind our neighborhood.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
My
you're right.
brothers and I, like, as soon as they abandoned it for years, we would just go back there and run around.
Yeah, I think I remember you guys went back there with somebody one time and rode a toboggan down that construction site.
Yeah.
Big
Somebody
6 foot
irresponsible,
long sled,
probably.
and almost killed yourselves. I can't remember who was with you. Oh, it was me. Yeah, but this idea of economic collapse, um, that can just wipe out your wealth in no time. And this one's actually discussed in the New Testament in the book of Revelation. When John's writing about the demise of Babylon, or probably Rome, he's using a code name for Rome.
Mhm.
But in Revelation 18, verse 19, he says, "Woe, woe to you, great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin." And that's kind of the way it can happen when economies go south, in 1 hour, just like the Great Depression, when the markets all collapsed and people were jumping out of the windows of skyscrapers.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird juxtaposition. Skyscrapers that were built off of the wealth that they had amassed, and then they were throwing their lives out the window
Mhm.
because they felt like they had nothing left. And they may not have any wealth left anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's back to that helpless situation, right? If you don't have anything else, like, but you still have God, then you have everything you need.
Yeah. People who have Jesus Christ as their God have unlimited resources. And that doesn't mean that you have a big giant pile of money. It means you have unlimited resources. Because he, as we've talked about through our whole series, has created everything, including you. But wealth, you cannot place your trust in wealth. And that's what I think the problem is with wearing yourself out to get more of it.
Yeah. I love what C.S. Lewis says. Don't place your trust in anything that can be taken away,
Hmm. Yeah.
which only leaves you with the one thing you have when everything else is taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your family could be taken away, your wealth, your your property and your job, your health, everything could be taken away except for your faith.
Yeah, I mean, you see that in a lot of the concentration camp, pastors and things
Mhm.
that wrote about their experiences in there. Like the one thing they can't take away from you is your attitude and your faith
Hope.
and your
Yeah.
hope. Yeah,
Yeah, you had pastors and priests doing prayer services and in the in the camps.
yeah,
A lot thrown in there, thousands, because they outside of the camp they weren't willing to sell out to the authorities.
yeah. There's an example of where you can be bereft of everything, but still um, have all the resources you need because you have God.
Hmm.
So the Old Testament scriptures, including the sayings of the wise, have I think are proving that they're wise indeed today. Because the only place you can put your trust is in God alone, and you can't put it in money. And it looks like these Old Testament scriptures were even in the possession of, you know, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle as they put together their philosophies that have been kind of the basis for Western civilization.
Well, you know the saying, "All truth belongs to God." Right.
Yeah,
One way or another, it was divinely inspired. If it was true.
yep, yep. So that leaves us with today's wise words takeaway, which is do not wear yourself out to get rich. Trust God to provide all your needs.
Yeah. Sometimes He provides that by a job. Like you still have to work some, like we were saying.
Yeah.
That just comes in moderation.
Well, I mean, we've even seen in the book of Joel where what people really needed was for locusts to come and wipe everything out so that they didn't even have anything to offer to God in the sanctuary.
Hmm.
And that was his whole point was your sacrifices are meaningless to you. I hate them because you don't mean it. None of it is coming from your heart. And he wipes out everything except for their hearts. And they're like, well, I don't have anything left to give you. And God's like, still got your heart.
It's like the giving tree.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, here in the sayings of the wise, we're seeing again where God wants us to think deeply about what we do before we do anything. And, in this case, you may be in the middle of wearing yourself out, working, getting up too early, staying up too late, wearing yourself out for wealth. Well, in that case, then you need to reevaluate and fix that, right?
Hmm.
Um, put your priorities back in order and put a focus on family. In that case, we all have parents. If we're not married yet, if you are married, you have a wife, and if you have kids, you've got them. And those are all good candidates of people you can invest in: your parents, your spouse, your children. If you don't have any of those things, the closest people to you in your life are the things you need to be investing in, not in getting more stuff.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's what a church
Yeah.
is people willing to invest in their relationship with God and to each other,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Rather than, or even at the cost of their worldly gain.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why a church is called a church family, because that's where family is valued above wealth.
Hmm.
So, okay. Well, he's Caleb and I'm Timothy, and thank you for listening to Bible Discussions on Biblocus, where the Bible intersects with your life. Please consider subscribing to our channel to help support our efforts. All scripture quotations, unless otherwise indicated, are taken from the Holy Bible, New International Version, NIV, copyright by Biblica Inc., used by permission of Zondervan, all rights reserved. This program is copyright 2025 by Timothy Klingerman. God bless all of you.